tell me about your title.
Okay.
And number two, maybe more important, why does data journalism matter as much as it does?
Okay. I'm a senior data journalist. Doing that, I take all of the data that we have at Culture Amp and I turn it into stories. There's so much there. We have 75 questions that are core questions that millions of employees are answering, thousands and thousands of leaders are answering. How do we make sense of all that? What can we do with it? We house it in a data lake, which we love. We call it our culture lake. And I get to just pull those pieces out and tell stories from them, because if we can't make sense of the data, we can't use it, right? And I think that's why data journalism is so important too. We need to be able to use the data that we have to tell stories that resonate with people. And I love data scientists. Often the two skill sets of telling stories from data and doing all of the really important work of cleaning the data, keeping it secure, those two skill sets just don't overlap often.
And it's very interesting because, right, on one side you had the business, the other side you had data, and there was a gap.
Yeah.
Right? And prior to the pandemic, I feel like data journalism, data translation was gaining momentum, and then the pandemic kind of squashed it, and we're seeing it come back.
We are.
And so you hear data storytelling and all these things, because 90 to 99% of people are not data scientists. They're not even data professionals.
Yeah.
And so if you go and ask the common person, and I don't mean common in a derogatory way, but just someone who's never worked in this space, go interpret this data, it's not going to happen. So in your opinion, that dives into the data literacy, which I helped pioneer. I helped invent that whole space.
Yeah.
So I love it to death. Why do you find it so important? Why is data literacy so important in your mind?
Again, it's the usability. There are a lot of people who, when you give them a percentage, they're not gonna make sense of that. And so we need to be able to tell it in so many different ways so that we can reach every different type of person, regardless of what level of education they have or where they're from. That's an effective story. And if we can reach those people who are not trained in data, we've been really successful, and it's really exciting. But I love what you're saying about the pandemic, because my interpretation of why we saw that drop off with data journalism is because companies all of a sudden were like, we need to restrict, we need to pull back, we can't be spending right now. And that was something that was seen as inessential. But it's coming back because I think people realize, oh, wait a second, we need to be able to make sense of the data. We need people who have that skill set to lead the way and continue developing this area of understanding data and getting it out.
Well, and it's so interesting because I think, adding on to what you said, the pandemic made it so maybe people realized, like, how many data stories were being told during the pandemic? And people, I think, got to the point of, I don't trust the data.
Absolutely.
This, and not to get into political ideologies, but this side is saying this is that. And there was this overwhelming or overflow of poor information.
Yeah.
And so I think that this data journalism and this ability to tell stories effectively helps to illuminate the insights. Because a lot of companies get good at telling the what. Hey, the line went up, the line went down.
Yeah.
But that's not insight. That's just a what.
Yeah,
we need to get to the
descriptive.
why behind it, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Get
Yeah.
from descriptive to diagnostic, diagnostic to predictive, and then eventually the machines can help with prescriptive.
Yeah.
So you're going on a journey, and I love that journey, and that's hopefully what data literacy will do.